Zuberi woke to silence. The storm had passed, but it had taken everything. His den, once warm and hidden beneath the dunes, was now swallowed by sand. The world felt unfamiliar, as if the desert had reshaped itself overnight. His family was gone. The air still carried the scent of dust, and Zuberi's tiny paws trembled as he stood alone for the first time. He sniffed at the mound where his den had been, digging frantically. Nothing, just sand. Tears welled in his amber eyes, but he blinked them away. "You must be strong," he whispered to himself. His mother used to say that the desert only respects those who face it head-on. So he faced it. With one last glance at the ruined hollow, he stepped forward into the unknown. Zuberi climbed the tallest dune nearby, the sand warm beneath his paws. From the peak, he could see nothing but rippling hills of orange and gold. No movement, no sign of life. Still, he had to try. He chose a direction where the sun felt softer on his fur and began walking, ears twitching at every whisper of wind. The desert was not empty. It breathed. It shifted. The dunes whispered to each other as the wind sculpted their peaks. Zuberi padded forward, alert and quiet. He found strange tracks in the sand, not his family's, but they gave him hope. Someone else had passed this way. Maybe they knew something. Maybe they had survived too. As the day burned on, the sun grew harsher. Zuberi's pace slowed. His paws ached, and his throat was dry. But the voice inside, the same one that had helped him chase beetles and escape hawks, urged him forward. When the sky turned pink, he found a rocky overhang. It wasn't much, but it offered shade, and that was enough. That night, under the stars, Zuberi thought of stories his mother told him. Legends of foxes who crossed the desert by reading the stars. He looked up, searching for the crooked line of 3 stars she'd shown him once. He found it faint, but there. He smiled. "Guide me," he whispered, curling into the dust. The next morning, Zuberi set out early, following the direction of the star line. His ears caught a distant thump. A heartbeat? No. Footsteps. He ducked behind a thorny bush just as a shadow passed the towering legs of a dromedary. Alone. Wandering. Its face cracked with age. Zuberi stayed hidden until it passed. Not all creatures were safe to follow. He ventured into a dry ravine etched with old markings. Curved symbols painted in red on the rock walls. His mother said the desert spoke through symbols, warnings, paths, memories. Zuberi followed them, feeling the weight of history beneath his paws. Here, he wasn't just a lost fox, he was part of something bigger. In the ravine, he found shelter again, a tiny cave carved into stone. Inside, he discovered bones. Not frightening, but peaceful. A resting place. He curled up, comforted by the presence of something ancient. In his sleep, he dreamed of a voice. It told him to keep moving east, toward the morning winds. Zuberi awoke to soft wind and cooler air. Morning was his friend. He pressed on, keeping to the shadows of rocks where the sun couldn't bite him. Along the way, he discovered a cracked clay pot buried in the sand. Its top broken but inside water. Just a sip. But it felt like magic. A forgotten gift from long ago. Days passed. Zuberi counted them by stars and by how many times his paws ached. He learned to nap through the worst heat and move in the quiet hours. He chased lizards, missed them often, but caught enough to keep going. Hunger became background noise. His eyes adjusted to find movement even in the stillest sands. One evening, he saw something unusual green. Not much, but a single scrubby bush, defiant against the sand. He sniffed it, then dug nearby and uncovered a cool patch of dirt. He rolled in it, paws kicking up earth, tail wagging like a pup again. It felt like joy. That night, a sound woke him: distant thunder, but not from the sky. A sandstorm. He had minutes, maybe less. He ran back to the cave in the ravine. But it was too far. So he did what desert creatures do: he dug. Fast he scraped a hole beneath a thick bush, dove in, and curled tight. The storm roared above him. Wind like 1,000 howls. Sand filled the air, stung his nose, packed into his ears. But he held still. He trusted the bush's roots to hold. Hours passed. When he finally crawled out, the desert had changed again, the bush gone, the stars hidden, silence once more. He climbed the nearest dune, his energy nearly spent. From the top, nothing looked familiar. He growled, not in anger, but defiance. He would not give up. Then he saw them: paw prints. Fresh. Alone. Maybe someone else had survived the storm too. He followed them for hours until they vanished into hard-packed ground. He wandered into a flat stretch of cracked earth. No dunes, no hills, just open space. Here, the sun felt endless. Zuberi slowed, nearly collapsed. But then, a scent, something sweet. Water. No. Fruit. He followed it, dizzy, until he reached a basket. Abandoned. Dates inside. Warm and dusty but edible. He ate like royalty. Near the basket was a scrap of cloth. Woven. Colorful. Soft. He wrapped it around his leg like a bracelet. A reminder that someone had passed this way and survived. That meant he could too. With new energy, he pressed forward. Days blurred again. He saw vultures once, circling. But he waved his tail and barked, daring them to try. They didn't. At night, he practiced using the stars, getting better at reading them. He was no longer lost, just in between. Eventually, Zuberi spotted something he hadn't seen in weeks: trees. Real ones. Low, wide, and green. He raced toward them, slipping down a dune and crashing into soft grass. Grass. He rolled in it, laughing in the way only foxes do: wild, free, full of relief. In the grove, he found a pool. Small, but clear. He drank deeply. Then again. His reflection looked tired. Older. He didn't look like the pup who had left the den. He looked like someone who belonged to the desert. Zuberi explored the grove. It had everything: shade, food, shelter. He found a hollow under a tree and sniffed it. No scent of danger. Just earth and bark and peace. He stepped inside. It was warm, soft, a perfect new home. He curled up, the cloth still tied to his leg. He thought of his family, not gone, just somewhere else. Maybe they too had found shelter. Maybe they were looking at the same stars. That night, the stars blazed overhead. Zuberi lay on his back, belly full, tail flicking lazily. He traced the crooked line of stars and whispered, "I found it. Him safe now." And so, Zuberi, once a lost pup in the dunes, became the keeper of the grove. The desert still whispered, still shifted, but now it did so around him. And he listened. Because he knew home isn't where you start. It's where you choose to stay.